Well, we're thrilled to have Curtis Morley on our podcast today. Welcome, Curtis.
Thanks, Mike. I'm so glad to be here.
Curtis has an interesting and rich background in entrepreneurship and has been involved in many different things, including being a best-selling author of The Entrepreneur's Paradox, right? Which was a huge success. So congrats on that. That's
Thank you.
amazing. But things took a turn in your professional endeavors, I guess. And I'd love for us to maybe kind of just dive into your story and your background a little bit. And we'll include some more info on your background and all that in the notes. But would love to just get right into the heart of things here. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about your journey of where you started in entrepreneurship and then some pivots that you made further into your career.
Yeah. So when I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, started several different companies, some successful and some not, more not than, and really thought that my path in life was going to be around entrepreneurship and around helping entrepreneurs to find the next level of business, go from basement to buyout, and I've been coaching entrepreneurs in that arena, helping them to really hit next level rapid growth. And about 5 years ago, I went through a couple of my own trials that really kind of had me reset. One is I went through a really difficult divorce, and it hurt in ways that I didn't know I could be hurt. And even though it was the hardest thing I've gone through, I'm incredibly grateful for it. And I never thought those words would come out of my mouth, that I'm grateful that I was able to get divorced. And it's because it gave me a chance to look at me. Yeah. It gave me a chance to say, who do I really want to be? Who am I really? What is at the core of me? What is that authenticity? And how do I dig into that authenticity? And so like you said, when The Entrepreneur's Paradox hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, my publisher was like, this is great. Let's do a 3-book series. And I was writing my second book around, it's called The Timeline of Business. Basically, that not only does everybody make the same mistakes but they make them at the same time. And as I've coached entrepreneurs through the years, I found out that there's a timeline. There's a pattern that people make the same mistakes, but they make them in the same order. So if you tell me where you're at in business, I can actually tell you what's coming next. And I was deep in writing that book. And the second big trial came around, and it still hurts. This is my friend Jerry. Jerry was one of my best friends in college, and it hurts. And a couple years ago, he took his life, and I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that in any way, because I truly believe that if Jerry just understood a few principles, really important principles, that he would still be with us. And so I called my publisher and I said, hey, I know we're writing this other book, but I need to push pause. I need to push pause, and I need to write a very different book. And that was the beginning of writing the book around counterfeit emotions and helping people like myself, like Jerry, like any of us, understand that there's emotions that serve us, that get us where we want to be. And then there's other emotions that counterfeit as those authentic emotions and actually create destructive cycles of disconnection in our lives.
Okay, there's so much to unpack in everything that you just shared. And first and foremost, I just want to say I'm so sorry for the loss of your friend. I know many of us in the community, in this brotherhood, have similar stories. Too many. And so my heart goes out to you and to him and his family. And I just want to, if we can, back up for a minute to the moment of you were having some some failures and some successes professionally, but meanwhile there was this relationship of your with your spouse, with your family, and going through that divorce. What I'm curious about is like, was that a moment in time where you started to become more aware of these counterfeit emotions and of these things that you've learned and are now teaching and talking about and writing? Like, what can you trace it back to? And the way you said it, you know, that you're grateful for having gone through that trial is a profound perspective, for one. And in my own way, I can relate with a story I often tell was just a really low point in my professional career that seemed like the worst thing that was happening in my life at the time. But what came from that was so beneficial and so good. All the stuff you said, like, I got to figure out
Yeah.
who I am and what is my life about and what is my purpose. It all sprang from that low point for me. And in a different way, right? I feel like you had maybe a similar type of experience with that based on what you shared. But I'm curious if that maybe what you did learn or take away from that really difficult time, and has that informed like the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, 100%. It was that's why I'm so grateful for that divorce, was because it there's people that choose to be humble, and then there's others that are compelled to be humble.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I was the latter. Is I was compelled to be humble
Mm.
through this divorce. And the relationship with pain, I had completely wrong my
Mm.
whole life. My whole life, I misunderstood, and not just misunderstood, but got it backwards
Mm.
of what pain really is. And it wasn't until I hit the lowest point that I've ever been, where, wow, we're getting deep, we're
Yeah.
getting vulnerable, where I was curled up in a ball on the kitchen floor, sobbing uncontrollably. It wasn't until that point that I started to understand what pain was really all about. I, my whole life, Mike, I smothered pain with other things. I smothered pain with numbing. I smothered pain with distraction. I smothered pain with misery. I would just heap misery on top of my pain because I didn't want to feel the pain. I didn't. I wanted to put on that happy guy smile and say, "Hey, look at me. I'm this nice, happy guy, everybody. No problems in my life." And that wasn't authentic. It wasn't true. It just wasn't true. And yeah, you look from the outside and you would think, "Oh, Curtis has got it made, all the check boxes were marked." But inside, there was a lot of pain that I wasn't addressing. I was taking that pain and I was just shoving it into that steel box in my heart and pretending like I didn't have to face pain. And that's not true. It's not true at all.
Wow. Yeah. So having to face that and to move through it, as opposed to continuing in that pattern or that cycle, which I think we all do, right? Our instinct is to avoid and escape pain. I think it's like a survival instinct, right? That
Yeah.
we have. But it's different when we're talking about maybe the emotional pain or the wounds, right? And maybe things that have been inflicted on us that wasn't even by our own choice from a young age, right? There are things that just happen to us. And then there are the things that we choose that maybe inflict pain upon ourselves or compound it. And you mentioned a distinction there that I'd love to understand a little better between pain and misery. And you said that you were piling misery on top to avoid the pain, and that's an interesting concept. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah. The image that comes to my mind is that pain is a very sharp, beautiful diamond. And And the interesting thing about pain, if you look at the list of all of the authentic versus all of the counterfeit emotions, the authentic emotions, all of them are meant to be held except for two. So you think about love. Love is meant to be held. Surrender is meant to be held. Abundance is meant to be held. But there's two of the authentic emotions that are not meant to be held. They're meant to be felt, not held.
And then let go.
And then let go. Yes, they're meant to pass through us. They're meant, the pain, there's a reason we cry.
Yeah.
Is because the pain needs to flow through us. And that pain is that beautiful diamond that needs to pass through us and radiate into our soul's light. And what we do, what I did, was that I would smother it with this black tar of misery so that I couldn't even see the pain. And the pain was sharp. The pain, it can cut and it hurts. And here's the thing, pain is meant to hurt. Pain is inevitable and it's meant to hurt. Guilt is also meant to hurt, but yet it's an authentic emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Misery smothers that. And when it does, it traps it inside us. When we, and to put a specific frame around misery is two components. Misery is blame and shame. When we're miserable, we are blaming other people for our problems. We are saying it's their fault, or we're shaming them, we're shaming ourselves. That whole let's get on the bandwagon, let's go beat somebody up, that feeling of like it's their fault and no responsibility here. That's misery. Yeah.
Offloading the pain is one way that's I've heard that described. Like if and that's why do people hurt other people? Because they hurt, and they're just offloading that, and they're just looking for a way to. It's an unhealthy way to deal with that, right? Yeah. And it's that whole concept of misery loves company too, right?
Yes. Yeah. The saying with pain is no pain, no gain.
Right.
The saying with misery is misery loves company.
Right.
Because misery can't actually exist unless it feeds itself. Unless misery adds more misery, it will die by itself. That our natural divine selves does not resonate with misery. Yeah. It does resonate with pain. And the beautiful thing about pain is that pain is God's chisel that he uses to carve out our souls so that he can fill it with love and joy. And when the pain comes in, we're supposed to feel it. We're supposed to feel it deeply. We're supposed to let it hurt. That's what pain was intended for, was to hurt, because pain demands action. Pain demands action. You cannot have pain without some kind of action. And the action I was taking in the past was smothering it with misery. Like, oh, pain. Okay, I've got to act. I've got to act right now. Where's my bucket of misery? I'm just going to dump this black tar over it. But if we let it hurt, if we let it flow through us and we say, holy cow, this hurts so bad. I don't want this in my life. And then we take action in positive directions and let that pain flow through us, then that's where growth happens. That's where God's chisel is like, here I come. Yeah. Get ready. I'm taking some chunks out of your soul because I want to fill it with love. I want to fill it with joy. And when you've got that dead wood in there, I can't fill it. So I'm going to come in here with my pain chisel and I'm going to start chipping off some pieces so that I can fill it for you.
Yeah, so interesting. So I know we're kind of diving right into some of these dyads, which you call them, which is the counterfeit versus the authentic emotion. And so maybe just to take a quick step back and identify the difference between those. And I'm just curious of how you, in everything that you went through, at some point you had an increased awareness of this concept. And then got to the point where you were researching it and studying it, and then now writing a book on it. And so I'd love to hear about how you got onto this concept, and then just help us all understand a little more clearly kind of like what is the big idea around authentic versus counterfeit emotions.
Yeah. So the big idea is that every emotion that serves us, every emotion that takes us where we want to go, those are authentic emotions. And every single one of those has a counterfeit except for one. There is one emotion that has no counterfeit and can't be counterfeited, and that's peace. Peace is the only emotion that has no counterfeit. Every other authentic emotion has a counterfeit. And you just go down the list. There's guilt. Guilt is a beautiful, healthy, important emotion. Its counterfeit is shame. Shame is one of the most damaging emotions we can feel, one of the most destructive. And they feel like each other. But shame puts on the clothing and looks and acts like guilt, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Shame says, I am wrong. Guilt says, no, 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 I did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Guilt says, I made a mistake. Shame says, I am a mistake. My whole existence is a mistake. It's a value judgment. That's what shame does. Whereas guilt says, I did something wrong. I'm going to take action. I hurt you in some way. I need to repay. I need to repair. I need to make you whole. And that's the beauty of guilt, is that it is one of the most healthy emotions we can feel. You look at others, like one of my favorite is surrender. Surrender is such a beautiful emotion, and doesn't mean, we're guys, right? You think of surrender and it's like, oh, wave the white flag.
Yeah,
I give up.
Give up. You're right.
No, no, no. That's the counterfeit.
Mm-hmm.
The counterfeit of surrender is resignation.
Mm-hmm.
Resignation says, I don't care. I'm not going to try. Surrender says, do your best and then give God the rest. Do everything you can and then surrender the outcome, because we don't have control.
Right. Yeah. There's kind of a stoicism principle in there around just awareness of what we can and cannot control, right?
Yeah.
And surrendering to the things that we can't, because that is a point of often of our pain and of our disappointment, is thinking we can control all these external things, outcomes that are beyond actually our ability, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and then something goes wrong and our world falls apart because we feel like then we're a failure because we couldn't control
Yes.
something that we never had control of in the first place.
And yes, I love how you said that. And the thing that people often, when I talk about counterfeits, is they immediately go to opposite emotions. So it's really easy because we're taught all our lives. We're taught our entire lives opposites. We're taught love, don't hate.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the far end of the spectrum. But what we're not taught are those emotions that slide right up next to the original emotion and masquerade as if they were that emotion. And that's why they're so dangerous. That's why they're so sneaky. And going back to your question of, the genesis of all of this, it really started for me with pain. It really started for me understanding that my previous mindset was pain is on one side, joy and love is on the other side, and they're exclusive. And there is a big solid iron wall that you cannot get through. You're either on the side of pain or side of joy. But I was wrong. It's misery. Right. Misery is completely exclusive from joy. Misery is completely exclusive from love. Misery is the opposite. And we get to choose. We get to choose whether we're going to place pain inside of misery, like bury it deep under that misery, or if we're going to elevate the pain and even honor the pain.
In its purpose. On
the side of love and joy. And my entire life, I know this is completely naive, but my entire life, I thought that I either get pain or I get joy. I never imagined that pain could live with joy. And it can.
Yeah, it's profound.
Not only can it live with joy, but that's where it's meant to be.
That's fascinating. This idea of the misery of compounding the pain, where my head goes with that is into sort of the behaviors around how we deal with pain, and then the beliefs that we have about ourselves in that space. And so if it's, the pain is caused by something, let's say, let's say a failed marriage, right? As an example, like my marriage failed and that hurts because of the loss of that relationship. And that right there is pain. But then everything that could follow, which is in my head, which would be in my head of all the beliefs that I have around myself, like, why did this not work out? And all of the attacks either towards myself or towards others. That's the compounding of the pain, which puts us in misery, right? The belief of like, I don't deserve, I'm not good enough, I am not, all those, it's that inner self-critic that is so loud and so persuasive because there's a big chunk of evidence from a life experience that's saying, yep, like I knew it. I knew I was unworthy. I was not good enough. I'm a loser. All the things that we say, right? And that voice that's in our heads, like, to me, that is the suffering, or sorry, the misery. That's the voice of misery that is so loud when something in our life happens like that. And so I'm curious if that kind of resonates with you on the distinction there between pain and misery, or if you kind of define it a little differently.
You nailed it perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Is that, yeah, the misery is, it's so insidiously sneaky.
Yeah.
That it, because it feels like it. It feels like, but the only thing is it just gets rid of the ability to honor that pain.
Yeah.
And to be able to give that pain away. That's gone when we smother it in misery.
Right.
And
it just persists if we drown it or smother it, as you said. It just persists if we stuff it down. That idea of suppressing, right? Suppressing, and the more we push down on the pain, the more it pushes back, the louder it gets. Yeah. And then the more drastic action we try to take to hide it and to make it be quiet. And then we're in those actions that are compounding the misery cycle or the shame cycle, right? Yeah. So fascinating. And so to be able to then face the pain and to move through it and to feel it, I think there's such a resistance that many of us have, especially I think as men, in the way we're just brought up culturally, the messages that we get around, don't show any weakness, don't cry, just man up, deal with it, cowboy up, whatever the saying is in your local region. There's some version. Yeah. All of that is teaching us to just stuff it down and not feel it. Yet feeling it is the way that we're going to move through it and release it. And so there's this really tough truth that we have to eventually reach, which is, if I don't deal with this, I'm going to continue in the cycle of misery that I'm in. And even though I've been taught this my whole life, it's wrong.
It is.
It's false.
It is.
Speaking of counterfeits.
It is so wrong.
And maybe that's a counterfeit right there, which is that can look like or appear as strength, right? It's like, it's strong to just tough it out, just stuff it down and not deal or face with my pain or my issues or my problems. And there's a counterfeit there of like, that looks strong, when in reality, facing it and dealing with it and moving through it is strength, right?
That's the definition. That is strength. That is masculinity. Is saying, I'm willing to lean into the pain.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lean out. I'm not gonna distract or go to the man cave or
just numb.
Numb or distract or layer it with misery. I'm going to lean into the pain and I'm going to let it hurt. And you know what? It's going to hurt.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt. And leaning in, that's where true masculinity comes in.
Yeah.
Because then we're not harboring these things that are ready to explode inside of us, this pain that is just like so enormous, and we're trying to shove it into that steel box in our heart and compress it down and say, pain. All we have to do is let it flow through us. All we have to do is feel it and cry and be a man and cry.
Yeah.
And let it hurt.
Yeah. And crying is one very healthy way, in my view, of letting yourself move through that, right? Of letting yourself release it. It's a cathartic experience, and yet one that we often want to resist so much because of
Yeah.
all the stigmas. And I think there are other healthy ways to move through pain as well, and maybe accompanied with the release of actually crying. But writing and talking to a trusted person, and there's all these ways that
Somebody in the Here Brotherhood.
there you go, right? Talking to a trusted friend. There are a lot of different means that we can move through pain in a healthy way. And that's something that I think we are not very well educated in or trained in our lives, and as men
Yeah.
in particular. And so that's something that I think just giving people opportunities to express and to be open and to face things and have an increased awareness. Sometimes we don't even know what it is that's deep down inside of us, and it takes some work to uncover and get to the source of that pain. But in that process, I think there is such opportunity for healing and for breakthroughs and for light to come in,
Mhm.
and then to come out, right? And it's this concept of a broken heart, I think, is connected to the idea of facing our pain and dealing with these things. And it's through a broken heart that through the cracks, that the light can enter and that the light can exit. It's just a beautiful concept. But I wanted to jump back to, I know you have some principles on how to identify and differentiate between what is an authentic and what is a counterfeit emotion, because I think that's
Yeah.
such an important thing to cover. And then maybe we can dive into one of those dyads a little
Yeah.
more. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. So there's 4 criteria to understand if what I'm feeling right now is authentic or if it's counterfeit. And thank you for bringing this up, because this is the game changer right here.
Hmm.
Like if anybody's taking notes, like this is the time to pull out the notepad, because this is, like you just said, we don't know our own emotions most of the time.
Yeah.
And Brene Brown did. She surveyed over 20,000 people, and she said that the average response, that she asked them to identify emotions they were feeling in the moment, and the average response was that people could identify 3.
Hmm.
That's it. Mad, sad, glad. Those were the emotions they could identify. They couldn't go deep into the other emotions,
Hmm.
and so in a way, we're emotionally illiterate.
Yeah.
I know I was.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so understanding these 4 criteria really nailed down the ability to say, oh, wait a minute, is this authentic or is this counterfeit? And the first one is connection. Like the connection I feel right here, talking to you. I feel that deeply, and that's authentic. The second one is direction, and we can get into each one of these. So connection, then direction. Where does this emotion take me?
Yeah.
And then the third is motivation. What is the motivation behind this? And then finally, the last one is valuation. And I know that's a business term. Yep, I wrote a business book. But valuation of what does this emotion value me at, and what does this emotion value you at?
Hmm. Okay.
And so there's the 4 criteria. I ended them all with shun, so they're easy to remember.
Cool.
So connection, direction, motivation, and valuation. And the first one, the connection, does this motivate, or excuse me, it does this connect me, number one, to myself.
Yeah.
Because we are so disconnected to ourselves in today's world with constant doom scrolling and
Distraction.
Netflix and Hulu. I swear there's a new series that comes out every week. And, so many distractions that we can dive into. And so we're disconnected from ourselves. So number one, does it connect us to ourselves? Number two, does it connect us to others? Number three, does it connect us to God? Does it connect us to our higher power? And number four is not a person. Number four is, does it connect us to the truth? And every single one of the authentics, they all connect. Every single one of the counterfeits, it plays out true in every case. They always disconnect. They always disconnect us from ourselves, from others, from God, and from truth. Like you think about shame. Shame completely disconnects us from the truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's Yeah. It's saying, oh, it's their fault. It's instead of tapping into our divinity.
Yeah. Love
Um,
that.
the second one is direction.
Hmm.
And every authentic emotion will take us forward, upward, or bring us together.
Hmm.
That's the direction of an authentic emotion. Does this emotion take me to where I want to go? Or is it either keeping me stuck and static,
Hmm.
or is it actually regressing me?
Hmm.
And it's really interesting because all of the counterfeit emotions, all of them, they come back to themselves. The direction of a counterfeit emotion is a circle.
I thought that was so fascinating because you intuitively think, oh, the counterfeit's gonna go backwards and downwards and separate, and there's probably some truth to that. But the idea of it actually cycling back to itself was just an unexpected answer that I heard from you, right? But as you think about it, I think it's so true when you think of, for example, the guilt and shame example. Uh, Shame cycles back to itself, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if I feel shame, I feel ashamed for the shame, and then it's
Yes.
just
Yeah.
it's just round and round we go. And let's take another example, like love and lust is one that
Yeah.
we should talk about a little bit more. But the lust kind of feeding on itself, right? Like
Yeah.
lust leading to lust, leading to lust. It's this trap. It's like this downward spiral, right?
Yeah.
And that was just fascinating to me because it's not the opposite that you would expect.
Yeah. Yeah. You would think it'd be, but it does. It builds on itself. Lust builds more lust. And the brain science shows this,
Hmm.
that the more lust there is, the more lust builds.
Hmm.
It's a snowball effect. Anxiety builds
Hmm.
anxiety,
Right.
right? Shame absolutely just piles shame on itself. Misery is just, misery loves company because it has to have more of itself. So it's that circle. And if you look at it this way, it's a circle. If you pull it up in 3D, every cycle
It's
goes a
a
little bit
spiral.
lower.
Yeah.
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 And so the direction is the number two criteria. Then you look at motivation.
Hmm.
And this is the neatest because motivation, it's every authentic emotion is motivated by love and surrender. And every counterfeit emotion is motivated by fear and control.
Hmm.
And for me, this is one of those that I can instantly tell, am
Yeah.
I in an authentic or counterfeit? And I am in counterfeits multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Like
We all are. Yeah.
it's that awareness, but I stop myself and I'm like, hold on, hold on, hold on. Is there fear? Because I know what fear feels like.
Yeah.
I know really well what fear feels like. And it's so easy just to ask myself, am I feeling fear with this emotion?
Hmm.
And love and fear are meta emotions. These two, love and fear, they flow through other emotions.
Hmm.
And so if I detect fear in my emotion, I can instantly say, okay, what am I feeling? Is it fear? All right, now let's transition that over to the authentic, and let's say, all right, it's time to surrender. It's time to love. And then I can shift back into that authentic. And
That's so there's a principle of mindfulness that comes up here for me, which is there's a stimulus and a response, and
mhm,
our response is often triggering of a sympathetic state, which is our fight or flight or
yeah,
freeze mode. And I think of like fear so often lives right there, right? Like something
yes,
happens, we have an emotional response. Usually at the core, it's fear. And one of the practices of mindfulness is to be able to recognize that, first of all, just awareness, which you mentioned, to be able to take a few breaths and then allow the fear to wash through. And before we react, because that's often what we do, we just react. And that's where we
yes,
often make some of our biggest mistakes is because
yes,
our primitive mind has been alarmed, and this fight or flight response is right there, and we want to react with, often it's anger, or we want to react with some big sort of out of control emotion, and it's just this instinctual kind of natural man space, right?
hmm,
And so if we can take a moment to pause and to breathe and to notice the thoughts, and without judgment and without criticism, just go, oh, okay, I'm feeling this because X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I felt fear. I felt aggravated. I felt whatever it is, and just observe that and let it float by without getting caught into the storm. Because sometimes it looks like a storm, right, in
Yeah.
our thoughts.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we're in that storm, I mean, that's when we just want to lash out, right? But to be able to breathe and transition from that reactive state of mind, that sympathetic state, to the parasympathetic state, which is our higher self, right?
Yeah.
It's not at the brain stem, which is just our, they call it the lizard brain,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We elevate out of that space. And when we're in the parasympathetic state, we're more clear headed, we're less reactive, we're more grounded, we're more rational, we're more compassionate. And I just think of that, what you just described of that, is it fear or control? That to me is that, am I in a sympathetic state right now? Am I in my primitive state? And
Mm-hmm.
can I take a moment to pause and to transition out of that state before I then take action? Because all these things you talk about driving us to action, emotion driving us to action.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something we also misunderstand. So often our choices, we think they're our thoughts, but usually our choices are driven by our emotions.
Yeah.
And our thoughts can inform emotions and vice versa, right? And so
Yeah.
how do
Yeah.
we manage all of that? But I just love that distinction, and I wanted to align those principles to some things that I've learned about through a mindfulness practice, and how much they are, those are parallel. So I just thought that was interesting. So thank you.
Yeah. Surrender is amazing because it leads us to one of the only emotion that has no counterfeit, and that's peace. Surrender
Mhm.
is so beautiful in that when we let go of the fear, when we let go of the control, when we let go of trying to pretend like we have any any control on this world around us, then all of a sudden we step into this place that is above.
Yeah.
We step into this beautiful, peaceful place that we can see the world as it is instead of as we are. And
Yeah. That's important too. That's good.
and
Okay.
so the
Yes.
final criteria is valuation.
Yeah.
What does this emotion value me at? And what does it value you at? Does it say that I'm divine? Does it say that I'm more than just a bag of flesh and bones? And does it say the same for you?
Hmm.
It has to be both, because otherwise you're getting into pride, like, well, yeah, I'm awesome, but no, not that person over there.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be both. And the counterfeits, they say we're worthless. The counterfeits say we're worthless, but they also say we're worth less.
Mm.
They get us into a state of comparison
Yeah.
of, oh, Mike has the best hair ever. You really do, by the way. That's awesome hair. I need some more right here. But there's but that idea that you're of infinite worth, you're of divine worth, and so am I.
Yeah.
That is so critical in understanding, is this authentic or is this a counterfeit? And one thing I really want to say is that um, there's no such thing as a bad emotion. Even the
Mm.
counterfeits. I
Mhm.
think this is really important. The
Yeah.
counterfeit emotions are messengers. They're messengers. That's it. They're not dictators. And oftentimes in life, we let them be dictators instead of recognizing that it's a message, that every trigger we get is a gift. Everyone, even the counterfeit
Mhm.
emotions, those are messengers. And it's so important, just like you said, to just watch them,
Yeah.
to just notice and
Yeah.
say, okay, I'm getting a message. It's time to unwrap the gift. Imagine Christmas morning, you got this pile of gifts in front of the tree, and you just look at them and you're like, no, just going to leave them there. You know, you never do that. But when we recognize these triggers as gifts, then we can unwrap them. And here's the thing. When you unwrap a trigger, when you unwrap this emotional response, it's going to hurt.
Right. I think that's why we don't want to open those presents, because it's like, I don't want to see what's in there.
Yeah.
Because it's something that's going to hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. And large life lessons linger until learned.
Mm.
They will stay with you until you learn them. So it's time to unwrap.
Yeah.
It's time to unwrap these presents, these gifts that we're being given, and say, okay, all right, let me look at what's inside.
Yeah.
And when we do, not only do we find the pain, but we find the growth,
Yes.
we find the joy,
Yes.
and we find the abundance.
Yes, I would add to that healing. We find the
Yes.
healing, we find the light. I feel like those presents probably have the I am imagining you open the box and there's the pain on top. And if you can just move through that pain, what's underneath it? It's all those
Yeah.
things you said, right? So it's a compound experience, and it's deep, and it's there's so much more to it. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And this is a fun analogy, especially for those that are watching the video, um, is from here,
Hmm.
I'm holding two $100 bills.
Hmm.
And from here, you would think that each one of these have the same worth, right?
Yeah.
But if you look really closely, like just reads what's on some of that right there.
Yep. It's counterfeit. Let's see. $100 for motion pictures purposes. Nice.
Yeah, this is movie money. This is what
Okay.
they use in
In
movies.
prop we trust. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But this one, so this one right here, this
Yeah.
one,
It looks real.
it looks real.
It doesn't feel real.
No.
Yeah.
But if you try to use this,
Yeah.
you're going to jail. Right? And if you try and use this one,
Yep.
it is real and it has real worth. This has, not only does it have no worth, but you try and use it and you're going to be in jail.
Hmm.
And in that same way, when we get into the counterfeits, we put ourselves, we imprison ourselves
Hmm.
in those emotions because they're so trapping. And one story I'll share is that when I went through my divorce, I joined a men's group. I wish the Here Brotherhood was around back then, but I joined a men's group for support,
Hmm.
and it was one of the best things I ever did. And I was on a phone call one night, and the guy on the other end, his name's Ollie, he goes, "Hey Curtis, do people say you're a nice guy?" And I'll tell you what, I stuck out my chest. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a nice guy." And he goes, "Well, let me tell you something. The nice guy is the most despicable person on the planet." And I'm like, hold on. That was a complete setup. You just totally
Yep.
set me up for that. And he goes, "Can I tell you why?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Because the nice guy is not honest.
Hmm.
The nice guy is manipulative."
Hmm.
And he went through this list, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And it hurt
Yeah.
because he just said I was nice, and I just said I was nice, and yet he was saying all these things. And that was really the second catalyst. The first was pain. The second was this experience
Hmm.
of understanding, okay, if nice, like nice is a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Nice was my insecurities trying to force other people to like me because I'm so nice, or to do things for me because I'm so nice. And it wasn't expressing true emotions. It wasn't leaning into the relationship.
Or authenticity. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, if nice is not working for me, then what is?
Right.
And that's where I found kind.
Yeah. Kindness.
Yeah. That's where I found that kind is a virtue. Kind is authentic.
Hmm.
Nice is a counterfeit.
Yeah.
Nice is not actually very nice at all.
Right. Oh, love that. Well, I know I would love if we could touch on the love lust dyad quickly.
Yeah.
Because I think the way that you describe that is so insightful. Would you mind touching on that one before we conclude here?
Yeah,
Okay.
you bet. You bet. And you can edit, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I know we wanted to give away a couple of the master
that's
classes
right.
too.
We're down to 3 minutes. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
We'll probably need to skip that then. Okay.
Okay.
Why don't we just wrap up then with what you wanted to share with the community who's listening?
Yeah. So we're doing a men's mastermind, and it's around 5 dyads.
Okay.
And the first one is nice versus kind, then power versus control.
Hmm.
And that one,
Interesting.
when I realized this one, I was like, holy cow, this
Yeah.
one is incredible. Guilt versus shame, and then pain versus misery,
Hmm.
and love versus lust.
Hmm.
And it's a 5-week masterclass. And I would love to give a couple of those free. to some of the subscribers to the Here Brotherhood podcast.
Awesome.
So
yeah, that's amazing.
the way they can do that is go to the Counterfeit Emotions Facebook group.
Okay.
And on the Facebook group, they can just sign up and say, I'm part of the Here Brotherhood,
Okay.
and I want to be entered into the giveaway. The class starts on March 11th,
Okay.
and it's virtual online. And then for everybody else that's listening that doesn't win, there will be a couple that win
Okay.
just by going to the Facebook group,
Cool.
Counterfeit Emotions. And then for everybody else, I would like to give $100 off. So using the code HERE, HEARE.
Amazing.
So,
okay. All lowercase.
all lowercase.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So you go to the counterfeitemotions.com and you can see the master classes and click on the men's masculine mastermind.
Okay.
It's a lot of M's.
Okay.
And then type in the word HERE, HEAR, in the coupon code, and it'll give $100 off.
Okay. HEARE.
Yes.
Okay,
HEARE.
perfect,
Thank you.
No, that's so appreciated. Thank you. I think, like you alluded at the beginning, having known these things early on, what impact that could have had, right? For not just for you and for me, but like for your friend Jerry, understanding these things might have given him some tools and some insight to be able to transition out of the counterfeit and into the authentic. And I think that is incredible work, and I just honor and respect you for the work that you're doing around this. Clearly, you have felt the call to spread this message, and there's so much hope in it, and there's truth in it, and there's, I think, breakthroughs in this for so many people. And so I just honor and respect you, appreciate you for spending the time and sharing these amazing things with us. And there's so much more that we could dive into. And so we'll check out the masterclass. We'll continue to have these conversations, and just appreciate you. Thanks for being on.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Yeah.
And thanks for the work you're doing to unite us men.
Thank you.
That means a lot.
Yeah,
Because
there's power in it.
We can't have any more Jerrys.
Yeah.
We need to get into a safe place of healing and do that with other men.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful for the work you're doing. So thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to so many more conversations.
Good. All right. Appreciate it. Thank you, brother.